It's long been written into history that Titanic reported striking a North Atlantic iceberg on April 15, 1912 at 12:40 a.m. ship's time, which translates to April 14, 1912 and 11:40 p.m. Hatteras Time. But did you know that Titanic transmitted a distress call several minutes earlier, and it was this very weather station, the Hatteras Weather Bureau Station in North Carolina, who actually received it? Today we're going to travel back in time to April 1912 and the sinking of the Titanic, and explore the details surrounding that tragic event and this little-known connection to Cape Hatteras, North Carolina, with a little help from this man right here, James D. Charlet, or Keeper James as he's referred to, author of Shipwrecks of the Outer Banks, Dramatic Rescues and Fantastic Wrecks in the Graveyard of the Atlantic, published by Globe Pequot Press. We not only read the book that features this fascinating story, but we got to meet Keeper James and his wife Linda at a book signing at the Cape Hatteras Lighthouse. And now we're going to share this incredible story with you, right here on History and Relics. The first coastal observation weather bureau station in North Carolina was established in Wilmington in 1871, the same year that the U.S. Life-Saving Service was created nationally. A weather bureau station at the Cape Hatteras Lighthouse Keeper's Quarters followed in 1874. This small wood-frame building is the Hatteras Weather Bureau Station, constructed in 1901 for what was then called the U.S. Weather Bureau, and more commonly known today as the National Weather Service. This building was one of only 7 built specifically for Weather Bureau operations. Weather Bureau station observers recorded readings around the clock and issued storm warnings when notified by Bureau offices in Washington, D.C. and Norfolk, Virginia. Early on, station staff typically consisted of 3 observers and a supervisor. This building served as a Weather Bureau station from 1902 to 1946, when it was converted to living quarters for Weather Bureau personnel. The property was then turned over to the U.S. Coast Guard, who used it until 1958, when it was conveyed to the National Park Service. It was recorded on the National Register of Historic Places in 1978. Fortunately, restoration work was started in 2001 and was finished within a few years. In the course of the restoration, workers removed insulation from the walls, which consisted of old newspapers and documents. One piece of paper was an old scrunched up and faded station log about receiving a telegram dated Sunday, April 14, 1912. It was the Titanic's distress call transmission. According to Keeper James's book that talks about this Titanic story in Chapter 18, pages 152 to 160, Weather Bureau station operators Richard Daly and Horace Gaskins were working late that night when the urgent telegram message was received from the Titanic at 11:25 p.m. That's 12:25 a.m. Titanic time on Monday, April 15th. The communique contained the words CQD, half-struck iceberg, and provided the ship's location coordinates. What is CQD, you might ask? Well, many believe it to mean come quickly, distress. But it is actually a message for or meaning security distress. French was the international language of the time, and the term CQ was originally the English-speaking telegraph operator shorthand of the French word CQ, meaning security. This was preceded by a secure, important safety message. It was an alert, like, "Stations, listen up." The D was added by Marconi stations in 1904 to specify distress, and thus security distress. Daly and Gaskins quickly forwarded the message to their Weather Bureau Station headquarters in New York, where it was received by 21-year-old David Sarnoff, who would later be the future president of the Radio Corporation of America, or RCA. Like so many people at the time, Sarnoff believed the Titanic to be unsinkable, so he responded by chastising the Hatteras operators, thinking it was a prank. Sarnoff asserted that the senders were troublemakers who were just clogging up the lines, and advised them to cease any further communications. Interestingly enough, an investigation later into Sarnoff's logbook showed that he signed off at 10 p.m. that night on April 14th, which was almost 2 hours before that harsh response. So, who really sent that reply, or why? We may never know. At 11:35 p.m., Titanic transmits corrected coordinates and states "have struck iceberg." The initial coordinates transmitted earlier were off by some 5 to 6 miles. Back at the Hatteras Weather Bureau Station, operators Daly and Gaskins also received this telegraph, but due to being reprimanded earlier, they did not forward this second message to the New York office. Fortunately, though, the steamship RMS Carpathia also received Titanic's plea for help and was the nearest ship to Titanic's reported position, but she was also some 67 miles away. The telegram message received at Hatteras was probably the earliest received anywhere because of the time that we typically hear that the Titanic struck the iceberg, which is 11:40 p.m. Even James Cameron's 1997 blockbuster movie Titanic, starring Leonardo DiCaprio and Kate Winslet, seems to focus on a clock reading the time 11:40. Had this earliest known distress call received by Hatteras been acted upon, there would have been several extra minutes that could have resulted in the rescue efforts being considerably faster, and thus possibly would have resulted in at least one more, if not all, of the lives being saved. But it wasn't to be. After striking the iceberg, it would take about another 2 hours and 40 minutes for the Titanic to sink beneath the waves, April 15, 1912. The Carpathia did manage to rescue over 700 people from the freezing Atlantic waters, but more than 1,500 others perished. While we were in the area, we located the grave sites of the Hatteras Weather Bureau Station operators Richard Baxter Daly and Horace Treadwell Gaskins Sr. Gaskins died at the age of 69 on April 20th, 1967, and is buried at the Manteo Cemetery, while Daly died on May 12, 1966, at the age of 76, and is buried in a private family cemetery in Buxton. As for the original telegraph transmission, it's on public display at the graveyard of the Atlantic Museum, just a mile or so away from the Weather Bureau Station in Hatteras. Before we close, we'd like to send out a very special thank you to Keeper James Charlet for sharing this incredible story with us. If you're interested in reading his book, be sure to check with your local bookstore or Amazon now. And for more information on Keeper James himself, you can visit his website at www.keeperjames.com. Thank you for joining us today. We hope you enjoyed our program. If you like our content, we ask that you give us a thumbs up, a like, share with your friends, subscribe to our channel, and ring that notification bell so you always know when our new content is published. And all of this costs nothing, but means a lot to us and keeps us growing. You may also leave us a tip if you choose. The address is provided here on your screen, and a link is provided in the description area below. So until next time, everyone, this one is history.